Talking about still to come, I think we saw at Caulfield yesterday that there's so much still to come from autumn racing. It was a fabulous race, the Zettertave Stakes, and it promises so much more. And tomorrow, of course, at Moonee Valley.
With the William Reid Stakes, yes. We'll take a look at the William Reid in a couple of minutes' time. But we talk about the Zettertave Stakes. Paklani, this brilliant filly from Western Australia, she proved yesterday that her form in the spring, when trained by George Hanlon here in Victoria, was all wrong. Yes,
that's quite mystifying, Bruce. She came here with, I think, a scoreline of 6 wins from 7 starts, and she didn't really fire a shot in the spring. Yesterday, the race was seen as a match race between the brilliant filly from Perth, Paklani, and the brilliant colt, Storaya. Although it was a match race, surprisingly, there was quite a variance in the odds. Paklani, as much as 4 to 1, was bet about her, while Storaya firmed to about 10 to 9.
She was favourite for the Golden Slipper as a 2-year-old. She had a tremendous record, and now they're talking about the Triple Crown, the Lightning Stakes, the Oakley Plate and the Newmarket Handicap. They're all coming up shortly, and only one other horse has completed that in the past. He was pretty special, wasn't he?
That was Placid Ark, and he also came from the West, didn't he?
Yeah, well, she's very good, and she, you know, I'm not saying that she can't. We'll get a good idea of with me tomorrow in the William Reid and line up the 2 fillies, I think.
Yes, and significantly, Bruce, Jim Cassidy, after the Zettertave Stakes yesterday, said that Paklani was blowing so hard she'd blow you over. So there's improvement there.
OK, so Jim thinks she was a little fat. Let's go to Caulfield, the Zettertave Stakes, the favourite Storaya, but Paklani looked a winner on the home turn.
Paklani travelling well, went up on the outside of Bell's Best when they turned for home, a length and a half to Lucky Dapper. Then Temperate King, he's hard at work at Storaya as Paklani swept to the front, 300 to go, beat off Bell's Best. Temperate King further out and Storaya coming down the middle, but the filly broke clear and she looks home here, Paklani. She's raced 3 lengths in front with 100 to go from Temperate King and Storaya from Lucky Dapper, but Paklani's too good. Jimmy Cassidy took the ride and Paklani gets the money comfortably, about 2.5 to Storaya. Lucky Dapper third, ahead away fourth.
Jim Cassidy in Melbourne yesterday, is he going to ride in Melbourne throughout the autumn?
Yes, he will. He was lucky to ride Paklani, actually, Bruce. A horse stood on his foot behind the barrier before the first. He missed 2 rides, packed his foot in ice. He's probably going to lose the nail of his big toe. But it's amazing the improvement you can make when you're riding a top-class filly in a rich race, isn't it?
Yeah, for a bit of percentage, about $3,500 for the winning jockey.
Money speaks all languages and aids the recovery rate.
Forget the toe, Keith. Think about the cheque.
Yes.
OK, let's go to Eagle Farm yesterday. Tiny's Finito's the horse in question here. He'd won 30 out of 47 before this race. He is going to go to Sydney next week for the Apollo Stakes. There is a chance he may come to Melbourne for the Newmarket. He had a huge weight yesterday and just missed out.
Always Grand nicely clear, running onto the bend, 500 metres out. He's 3 in front to beat the traffic, followed by Tiny's Finito on the inside, then Lord Penn, Larabon, Perseus, Sanhedrin's Pride, and Noble Clubs is last into the straight. Always Grand has got a nice lead. He's 3 in front. Tiny's Finito coming to the outside now. He's popped the big question. He's starting to bridge the gap, then beat the traffic. Always Grand in front. The boy's gone for the doctor. Tiny's is coming at him with beat the traffic on the outside. Tiny's Finito moved up, poked his nose in front. They've got 100 to go. Beat the traffic. Going with Tiny's Finito. Tiny's Finito beat the traffic. It's going to be a beauty. They hit it and beat the traffic. Beat Tiny's Finito. He got him in the last 20 or 30 metres. Beat the traffic first. Tiny's Finito second. Third always.
Huge difference in the weights there. And I still think Tiny's Finito's up to running a big race in something like the Newmarket.
Yes, I think he would too, because he would have a lighter race. He has a sort of following up in Brisbane, doesn't he?
Oh, they love him.
He's a real character of the turf.
He's a bit like Vo Rogue up there. He's got a cult following. And one good thing about him, he's a strong sprinter, and that's what you need for a race like the Newmarket Handicap. Now, yesterday in Adelaide was the Irwin Stakes. We thought we were going to see one of the Newmarket favourites in Be Gone, a 3-year-old trained by Peter Hayes. He looked pretty disappointing, didn't he?
Yes, because he was so impressive at Moonee Valley on his trip to Melbourne, and yesterday he didn't fire, did he?
And Beau George, who won the race, is a Morphettville specialist, but he's been to Melbourne before and hasn't quite measured up, even though he's won more than $400,000 in prize money.
He's a very good horse. His best races are when fresh, Bruce, and he was relatively fresh yesterday and he won well.
He has a habit of missing the start. Let's go to the Irwin Stakes at Morphettville and you'll see Beau George gets right through on the inside to win.
And Richmond Boy goes up deep on the track. Bush batter the centre. Over on the inside of those was Status, and they were followed by Ideal Score easing to the outside. Begon is about to be claimed upon or called upon. Getting into trouble, Storm Wedge had to check. Beau George took the shortcut on the rail. Wider out on the track, Prince Anton, and they were followed further back then by Durbridge starting to cut loose out wide. They're right across the track now. Beau George is getting a run through. Ideal Score, Durbridge, and down the outside, Prince Anton. Beau George took the shortcut, put put his head in front, and Beau George too good. Beau George a length and a quarter, 2 Still Sculptress or Prince Anton. Richmond Boy and Ideal Score further back Durbridge. They were followed by Storm Wedge, Begone.
Yes, a good win by Beau George. It was a pretty good field because Durbridge, we saw him win the Sandown Guineas in the spring. And I still think Begone's got a chance of coming to Melbourne and doing well. I wouldn't write him off yet. He hasn't won first up, and I think he just needs racing.
Yes, that's worth bearing in mind. He will improve for sure. Beau George took the short way home. Shades of local knowledge at Caulfield, but we won't talk about him because he was 50 to 1 and did none of us any good, Bruce.
What about Wellington yesterday? It was a Wellington Cup. This is one of the classic 2-mile races in Australasia. Terrific finish between Castletown, who'd won the New Zealand Derby as a 3-year-old, and a mare that we know very well in Australia, Shazora. She's won a Brisbane Cup. She ran a great race in the Caulfield Cup.
Well, both had campaigned here, and they were two that we knew quite well, and they did, as you said, fight out the finish.
OK, let's go to Wellington yesterday. It was the Wellington Cup, one of the big races in New Zealand. A tremendous finish between Castletown on the outside and Shazora on the inside.
Goliath kicked the length in front of Cake and I sent out after him. Here's Castletown out in the centres and Shizora's coming with him as well. Castletown levelled up now, win a length and a half or 2 in front of Shizora. Then we've got Cake and Ice on the inside. Castletown, Shizora's a length back and she's coming after him the inside. Castletown and Shizora draw away from Cake and Ice. Shizora's getting through on the inside of Castletown, who won't give in. Castletown has won the Cabernet. Shizora, a grandstand finish. Then we had Cake and Ice third in front of Rural Prince.
Well, Kiwi won a Wellington Cup and went on to win a Melbourne Cup. Castletown, I know he didn't really fire in Australia last time, but he'd be someone to look forward to in the spring.
Yes, he's getting better with every race. He was ridden by Noel Harris, who rode Our Poetic Prince and had other big successes in Australia. He's won some big races here.
I think he won the Sydney Cup on King Aussie last year, Noel. So
that's right.
You know, he's done very well. He's a very good jockey. He was favourite, and often favourites don't win 2-mile events, so it was a good performance, a good start. I think Shazora, we've probably seen the best of her, don't you?
Yes, she's a mare, and I think you're right, Bruce, that there's little improvement there, but she's full of courage, isn't she?
No, she's only a tiny little thing. I love to see her do well. OK, the William Reid Stakes tomorrow. It's a $270,000 race. It's really the beginning of the autumn. It always...
Declared, or Border declared, setting England an impossible target of 472 to win the match.